Hi everyone. So one question I often get is, Dave, with all the projects you do, things like this and even larger, how do you get them done so quickly? Especially, how long does it take? And so I think one of the things that's really helped me is I've found some ways to kind of speed up the process, especially when it comes to cutting the strips of paper needed for Snapology. Cutting these by hand with scissors is very impractical, and plus that it's not very accurate. I needed accurate, consistent width pieces all the time. So what I did was I rigged up my paper cutter. So this is my paper cutter. It's a little hard to fit in camera here, but it's just your standard, everyday paper cutter with some, ignore all this stuff I've taped to it for now. This is what you call a guillotine paper cutter. It's because it's got the blade and just, slices the paper right there. Now, right away, I just want to say, don't ever do this. This hole right here, and there's another screw on the other side, I took off the finger guard here. These things are very dangerous. I've had a few close calls myself, cutting multiple amounts of paper. And so never take the finger guard off. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes, but don't ever take off the safety guard that goes here, okay? Because this will slice off things. All right, so the idea is this, is I wanted a way to cut consistent strips of paper in a much faster way. And so one way you might think, oh, well, a paper cutter, then I can just take my piece of paper, line it up with the measurements on the deck of the paper cutter, and then slice. But even that was too slow. So what I did was I created this right here, and I'm going to bring this closer to the camera so you can kind of see it. What I've got here is basically overlaid pieces of cardstock that make kind of a staircase, and the staircase goes upwards this way. And you can see it better here. Here's another one of these that I kind of made it so the glue came apart. But you can see what I've got here is a piece of cardstock, on top of it another piece glued on, and then another one and another one. So it forms this staircase. And so this I just kind of came up with because it goes with a lot of the woodworking I do. When woodworkers use a table saw, let's say this is your table saw and the blade's right here, to get a piece of wood a certain width, they'll run the piece of wood onto the blade, but over here they'll put a fence. Well, essentially what I've done is I put multiple fences on my paper cutter so that as I go through it, I can physically just bump up the paper against the fence. You can hear it hitting right there. Alright, so what I'm going to show you how to do is how to make this fence. So the first thing I would do is get some cardstock. It does need to be cardstock because you want that physical thickness. So what I've got here is some cardstock I cut up about 3 inches wide. Doesn't really matter. And then normally I'd take a lot more care with it, but I cut one strip just the way I want it. Okay, and you want this strip to be as perfect as you can possibly get it. Because this is what you're going to use to set up your fence. And if this is slightly off, then everything else is going to be slightly off. Alright, so, and one way I check is I cut a few strips, and then what I'll do is I'll take one strip end to end like this, and I'll see how closely the ends match up. So if these are the same exact width, I can almost guarantee that everything here is going to be nice and parallel. But if, like, let's say this end was slightly more narrow than this end, then it's off, of course, and so I'd have to recut a new one. Okay, but cut a few slices and get the one that's as close to perfect as you can get it. Alright, so then what you do is you get your cardstock and you get some glue. I just used a glue stick. And what I did was I just put my perfect strip right on the edge of my cardstock, like so, and lined it up as close as I can. And I'm not going to do everything here just for the sake of time, but just imagine I'm lining this up nice and perfect, like that. Okay, I'm not going to glue it down. I'm just going to use this so that now, when I take this piece, I'm going to lay some glue down here, and then I'm going to glue this piece on just like that. Okay, so when I remove my perfect strip, I get a duplicate of that same perfect strip right here, and then these two pieces are glued together. Alright, then I just repeat the process. I then take that perfect strip, line it up against the edge of the green paper, or cardstock I should say, lay some glue down, glue this here, and then let it dry. and then just repeat as many times as you feel is necessary. Lay this down, another piece of cardstock, glue it down, and what you essentially get is a staircase. If you think of the side profile of this, even though it's not glued together, I'm just going to pick it up. If you think of the side profile, all this is a staircase of cardstock. Bottom step, second step, third step, top step. Okay, and so what this does for you is this, is that I can now attach this to my paper cutter. Okay, I've already got one here. It's kind of hard to see because it's all one color, but this is set for 1/2 inch. So now, basically all I have to do is I take a piece of cardstock, and again, don't do this without the finger guard normally, but what I can do is I can just slide my paper over until I hit the top step of my staircase. And you can hear it hit. So I don't even have to look to line things up, I just have to physically push it as far as it'll go until my cardstock stops right here, and then I cut. And then what I do is I take my cardstock and I move one step down. And again, hitting it against that next step, and then down one more step, another step, and so forth. I'm going to stop here since I don't have my finger guard. Okay, but what I get is perfectly consistent strips of paper. In this case, this is my 1/2 inch setup. Okay, if I was using that other one, I'd get 1 inch. All right. Now, one other thing though, you'll notice all I did was I just took some masking tape and I taped it on. Ignore these, the white and yellow here. This is for something else. But this green cardstock right here is essentially what we were just building. Okay. Now, one other thing though, you'll notice I don't have my staircase all the way to the edge. Okay, and it's because the paper cutter depends, just like scissors, on this metal edge right here, this metal blade, and the edge of the deck. Okay, these two need to come together to have that scissor-like cutting effect. If you put your staircase all the way to the end of that, then you in effect make it a lot more difficult for it to cut because you've put this piece of paper on top of your metal edge. So what I like to do is I like to take that same perfect strip, line it up against the edge of my paper cutter, and then take my staircase, and I'm going to use this one since it's already glued together, take my staircase, line it up, and then tape it down into position. That way the deck of the paper cutter becomes the bottom step. So now I've got bottom step and then all the steps on my staircase jig. Okay, so never put it here. You want to take that strip so you can back it away one exact space away from the edge of the paper cutter and then tape it down. Okay. All right, so that's one part of it that really helps me speed up the process, is just having this on the deck of my paper cutter and just being able to go in there and take a piece of paper and, you know, even though I look just for safety reasons, I really don't have to. I can feel my way through this. I can feel that paper hitting the deck, and I cut. And I hit the next step, cut. And I can get through a lot of strips relatively quickly. Okay. And again, we'll stop there since I don't have the finger guard. Okay. Never ever use this without the finger guard. Again, I just took that off for demonstration purposes. But take a look at what you get. Just nice, consistent strips fairly quickly and painlessly. Alright, so I hope this helps those of you that are into Snapology origami. I could also see this being used in quilling. Quilling tends to use a lot of strips of paper, not as thick as cardstock, but still anything that speeds up that process of cutting strips of paper.